How much does digital advertising cost? How much more expensive can you expect your customer acquisition costs to get over the next year? When are you getting great value and should spend more? When are you paying too much and should pull back? Based on the 8-figure budgets that we spend on digital marketing, I feel confident to answer the most frequently asked questions of our clients and prospective clients. So let's get into it. First place we need to start is CPM. Do you know what CPM is? The M is Latin, standing for 1,000, cost per 1,000 impressions. Very old media term, got its start with newspapers, TV, radio, and it's basically used in that media to price a premium on the more expensive placements or channels or shows. So a primetime TV show may have an $80 CPM, so $80 to get in front of 1,000 people, whereas a 2 a.m. cable news channel might be $8 to get in front of 1,000 people. Now that's being carried over into most of the digital advertising channels. It's not what's used for Google search, Bing search, pay-per-click. I'm not going to be talking about that in today's video. There's thousands of videos explaining the auction and how that works. I recommend searching for Hal Varian, Varian, Hal. It's kind of the original Godfather explainer, very Microsoft-esque video, but it's a good one. And it sort of explains everything. Not much has really changed in the option for a long time. So specifically, I'm going to be talking about the display and video-based channels for digital. The second thing you need to know is the algorithms are lazy. And why that's important to know is in relation to CPMs. So with digital advertising, the harder that you make an algorithm work, the more expensive your CPM is going to get. In general, the looser the targeting. So say if you just targeted 18 plus, no gender, no location, no interest targeting, that's going to be your cheapest CPM. If you add on to that an objective that's really easy to achieve, let's just say reach, very simple for the algorithm to go and reach somebody on that day. In Australia, we would expect that you're going to pay less than $5 to achieve that 18 plus just reach on most of the platforms. For social platforms, YouTube might be a bit more expensive. What I won't get into today is explaining a bit more around reach and frequency. So when I'm saying a cost per 1,000, while it is reach, it's actually specifically impressions. So it could be reaching 800 people 1.2 times or whatever the maths would be there. So if you want to find out more about reach and frequency, I'm going to record a video in the coming weeks. So subscribe below. The moment that you add additional targeting or objectives, making that algorithm work harder, you're going to see your CPM rise. So let's take that 18 plus. Now we're going to say we actually only want to target 25 to 54-year-olds. That CPM is going to cost more than 18 plus because now there's a fewer set of audiences to get. If we add an objective to that to say we want 25 to 54, but now we only want females who are looking to buy our brand, that's going to increase the CPM again. I started my career client side. I know some of the frustrations in working with agency and some of the complex answers you get to what feels like basic questions. The truth is, how much does digital advertising cost? Well, it depends. And I know that's a frustrating answer to get, but we can talk through some benchmarks as we keep going through. There's another big difference when we talk about digital advertising CPMs versus traditional CPMs, newspaper, TV. That's the relationships. With TV and newspapers, it's one-to-one. You as the brand or your agency operating and the publisher or channel or platform. You negotiate a rate and you lock that in. When we get to digital, there's a third party. It's us, the end user. It's people who are using the platform every day. We can actually have an impact as end users on what the overall CPM brands pay. What I mean here is the platforms want to show content that people are likely to engage with and stay on their platforms for longer. So if you take the exact same TV ad, you get the same agency to negotiate the same deal. There's no penalty if that creative's bad, if people aren't taking the call to action, if they're tuning out after 3 seconds. They're both going to get the same price. It was locked in. But in digital, you could have the same brands targeted, so 2 different brands targeting the same audience, similar style, let's say video creative, but one creative is doing best practice, branding first 3 seconds, there's a hook, there's a hold, it's more content creator style, versus someone who just cut up the TV ad and brought it on. And so in that instance, the better creative is actually going to impact the overall CPM. There's an equation that we can put to, it's really looking at the CPMs is going to be your audience plus targeting times your creative engagement. That's going to equal your cost. And so look, when we say it depends, there are some benchmarks that we can look at creating. What I would encourage you to do, the best thing is actually look at your specific data over, let's say 2021 and 2022. And what you want to have a look at is when you did just your pure reach or video views, what were your CPMs? When you tried to do conversion-based campaigns for cold audiences, what were your CPMs? And then when you went to conversion-based activity for remarketing audiences, what were your CPMs? I'm going to put up a corresponding blog and you can get some of those benchmarks to have a look at as well. The role of a media agency and my agency's job working with our clients is to balance those CPMs. Because on one hand, the brand building just reach, as I said, might be under $5, whereas your remarketing audience, that might be at a $30, $40, $50 CPM. And so on one hand, you can look at it when thinking about how much digital advertising costs and says, why would I pay $50 to reach 1,000 people or $30 to reach 1,000 people when I can pay $5 to reach them? So as you know, if you're watching this, you're obviously engaged in digital advertising. The biggest advantage and difference in digital advertising versus traditional is we can measure intent and action live against those ads. And so the goal would be that your conversion-based activity is converting at a higher rate versus your brand building activity. But we can actually apply some metrics to do that. So if we take our $5 CPM for reach, and let's say it's a pretty good ad, it's getting a 1% click-through rate, which is pretty healthy for top of funnel, just from a reach point of view. So for a 100-day $5 CPM, that means we're going to reach 20,000 people. 1% click-through rate, we're getting 200 clicks. Let's be really generous because it just helps my maths and says we get a 0.5% conversion rate. I know that's low, but this is absolute cold audiences who just saw a reach campaign. That means we get one purchase at $100 CPM. Now, if we could actually do that, I'd be pretty happy to go to our clients and say, look, we can break even on your brand awareness. So that's maybe a bit of a misleading example, but here is to where it's to give the example. So we've got a $30 CPM to reach our remarketing audience and a $5 CPM to reach our top of funnel brand reach. So it's a 6 times premium for our remarketing audience. What we want to see is that we can get at least 6 times better performance for conversion out of the bottom of funnel. So let's go off a 5% click-through rate because people have already been to the website. We're following best practice with a great ad with social proof, building a bit of hype, unboxing. And so our $100 a day budget in this example is only going to get us in front of 3,000 people, 3,300. 5% click-through rate is going to get us 166 clicks, and then we're going to go for a 3% conversion rate. Again, these are people who've already been to the website. You might have higher or lower for your remarketing audiences. That's going to deliver us 5 purchases at a $20 CPM. In the first example, $5 CPM got us 1 purchase, $30 CPM got us 5 purchases. It's been able to understand and balance it. Obviously, there's different metrics and I've simplified it a little bit. But again, I just want to show you why the answer is it depends and why it's important to try and clarify some of these numbers with your ad account data and with your agency. Now, there's a final piece of the equation. If we take it so we know that audience plus targeting times creative engagement equals your cost for digital advertising, well, we've got a surge pricing or a peak pricing. And so as I record this, it's November in Australia and we're about to go into the November sales period. There's a couple of sales already kicking off before we get to Black Friday. We're also in my home state about to see a Victoria election, so a state-based election. As more advertisers want to come into the platform, it's going to get more expensive to use. But if we look ahead to 2023, we can start having a bit of a think. It's really supply and demand that also impacts your CPM. This is that final piece. And so there is another macro impact, which there's obviously a lot of content about, the recession. And depending, yes, there's all the studies to show brands should keep spending. But if we look at how people behave once we got to the pandemic, if people do something similar, let's say 30% of advertisers drop out of the auction straight away. And so while it's true of peak season, so right now in my home state in November, all the CPMs are rising across all media because it's just more in demand. There's also likely to be true next year is that there will be less advertisers on the platform as they pull back budgets, particularly performance budget. There's a lot of chatter right now. Quite curiously, a lot of performance agencies say, no, you got to do all brand. Meanwhile, the sort of media traditional agencies have upskilled in performance and sort of community. So it's not either or. We can record another video on that around getting that full funnel performance branding done right. But let's talk a bit about, I guess, some of the doom and gloom that's been in the market this year for 2022. Now that you understand a little bit more about CPMs, we can talk about that. So you had your iOS changes. That took away a lot of interest targeting, so that impacts things. But it also took away a lot of your remarketing audiences. And so those CPMs have likely increased because there's a smaller amount of people. Remember, if the algorithm was getting someone 10,000 audience, they can probably find them at least once a day. But if it's now 1,000 people, or if it's gone for 100. But the other change that's happened is that people aren't using Meta products as much. TikTok's had a rise, YouTube Shorts, and there's a diversification. You've probably seen that in your own media channels. And so what that means is any objective is now harder for the platform. So rather than people going onto Instagram 2 or 3 times a day, maybe they're only using it once a day or every other day. And so your remarketing audience that already got smaller, so therefore the CPM went up. Then those people that you had still in your audience were using the platform less, so they couldn't guarantee to get in front of them as often. Why that reach and frequency video will be important, but for now, just to understand there's that CPM impact. If we look ahead to next year, yes, 20-30% of advertisers may drop out or reduce their budgets, but if less people are using Meta specifically here, it may kind of balance out what we're seeing. So in theory, a recession should make it cheaper, and that's where a lot of the marketing literature and research has been about, hey, look, it gets so much cheaper. If you keep spending during a recession, you'll go well, versus if you try and pop up once things are good again, then everyone is and costs, rise. So you got to have a look at this. I think also having a look across other channels. So TikTok's likely to be continuing improving what they're doing from an advertising platform. I think YouTube and YouTube Shorts is still kind of the sleeping giant for a lot of brands that just haven't taken it up. One thing on YouTube, what I expect is that because there's just going to be more impressions available with YouTube Shorts growing. So when you're setting up a YouTube campaign, it's likely the CPMs there will probably stay the same or reduce because of more inventory. Actually, they'll reduce. But to get actually on YouTube, so not on display placement showing video or on YouTube Shorts, but on the actual longer form video, I think that will become more expensive. I think big brands will continue to invest there, and some of the targeting changes to YouTube is going to make that difficult. So I think when you're setting up your YouTube campaigns, just watch where you're viewing that. A note on YouTube as well, why we do preference it sometimes in terms of our client mix is while the CPMs can be more expensive, as I'll share in that blog post, the reality is a view on YouTube is a deeper engagement, more memorable. It's at least 5 seconds, potentially 15, versus your 2 or 3 seconds flicking you off onto Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. So we haven't even spoken about programmatic. I do think that's another big opportunity. It's obviously used heavily for the big brands, but I think the same way that smaller brands can cut through, or just more digitally savvy brands can cut through on YouTube with having creative that fits that platform, I think that's unexplored territory for a lot of brands. So again, subscribe if you want to hear about our take on programmatic and how you could be looking at that as a brand that maybe doesn't have tens of millions of dollars for advertising. You can do that within your current sort of budgets and slice off a bit. That wraps up how much does advertising cost? The answer is it depends. Hopefully giving you a working equation of audience plus targeting times creative equals cost with a mindset of surge and peak season. The best thing for you to do is look at your own data and then start putting some benchmarks in place so then you know, hey, we're actually paying more for this reach. And as you develop that muscle, what you'll start to see is actually the CPMs can be a great indicator of where a creative is getting engagement or not. And so you might see CPMs massively increase. It might be seasonality, but if not much else has changed, it could be due to that creative not performing as well as the previous. And the other thing you'll see as you work on that creative and test and learn, the best advertisers pay the least because they've got the best performing content. Thanks so much. Subscribe, like, sharing comments. Love your support. And thanks for watching.